12 News Commitment 2022 Election Special, The Race for Wisconsin Governor. The Republican candidates answer your questions, just days away from the fall primary. Now, a WISN 12 Commitment 2022 Primary Town Hall. Live from No Studios in downtown Milwaukee, here are tonight's moderators, 12 News' Joyce Garbaciak, Matt Smith, and Gerron Jordan.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's WISN 12 News Town Hall. The next hour will be brought to you commercial-free. I'm Joyce Garbaciak.
And I'm Matt Smith. We are honored tonight to be joined by the Republican candidates for governor joining us on stage this evening.
No Studios in downtown Milwaukee is the backdrop for tonight's event, and our Gerron Jordan is in the audience with voters. Gerron.
Good evening to you, Matt and Joyce. Good evening to everyone at home. The voters tonight will be asking their own questions and listening to the candidates' response before they cast their ballots in next week's primary.
We have asked the candidates to answer the questions directly and concisely.
And they may speak directly to each other, but we are again asking, we are going to be managing the time on any given topic.
So tonight, here are your candidates on the stage. Rebecca Kleefisch. She is a former Wisconsin lieutenant governor, having served with former Governor Scott Walker between 2011 and 2019.
Tim Michaels is also joining us tonight. He co-owns Michaels Corporation, an energy and infrastructure construction company with its headquarters in the Dodge County village of Brownsville.
Also on stage tonight is Timothy Rampton of Campbellsport. Rampton currently serves in the Wisconsin State Assembly, representing the 59th District.
Now, by lottery, the campaigns have determined the seating order as well as who will answer first. So let's get right to it. Gerron.
The first voter we have tonight is Krista Pelk. She is a paralegal from Milwaukee. She was going to vote for Kevin Nicholson, but now is undecided on who to vote for. Your question.
Thank you, Gerron. Yes, that about sums up my predicament. I was excited to vote for Mr. Nicholson. It seems like he was focused on the issues and didn't attack his other candidates, which is my main concern about you three. If you could, explain. If you're elected to be the next governor of Wisconsin, will you continue to be combative as you are in your ads, or will you focus on unifying the state of Wisconsin, and how would you do that? Thank you very much.
Ms. Kleefisch, you'll begin.
Sure. Hi, Krista. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm incredibly grateful to you and all of our Wisconsin neighbors, and to you at Channel 12 WISN for sponsoring tonight's forum. It's so important that we unify, not only as a party, but also as a state, because what we have seen over the last 3.5 years is Tony Evers tear Wisconsin limb from limb. He literally used our Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation to put Wisconsinites against one another, telling some people they were essential and other people they were not essential in our own economy. And then there were some school kids, including my own, who were locked out of their own classrooms. And then even when they returned, were forced to wear masks on their faces. And then some kids who were told they couldn't even play interscholastic sports. It pits moms and dads and kids against one another. And then on top of that, Tony Evers has pit law-abiding citizens against criminals in his effort to side with rioters instead of our good cops. And so what we have seen over the last 3.5 years is a legacy of division because of Tony Evers' weak and failed leadership. And it's my hope to continue with my leadership legacy, to unite people, as I have during the Governor's Task Force on Minority Unemployment, or leading the Governor's Task Force on Opioids Abuse, or bringing together the Interagency Council on Homelessness, where we can do good bipartisan work in order to unify Wisconsin behind a common effort to have a more affordable state, a safer state, and a state with education that's great again.
Ms. Kleefisch, thank you. Mr. Rampton.
Mike?
Yep, you're all set.
You're hooked. You're good.
You don't have a hookup one. Okay, I got it. Okay.
I got a dress on.
Krista, thank you for a great question. I focus on presenting to the people what I plan on doing, not what others are doing. So in my displays with my website and with any of my collateral material that I hand out, I speak about the issues of concern that drew me into this race. I want the people to have an individual who's been around the block a few times, who's worked in the private sector for, in my case, 45 years, and in the public sector. I'm also a school board member. I'm in my 4th term. or my 10th year. I'm very proud of that because it has me very close to kids and education, and that's where a lot of what we need to do right to help our society down the road starts with the kids in school. And also being a legislator in my second term, I'm an outsider on the inside. I see what's broken. I see some of the individuals who help perpetuate those situations. And what we need to do is work to resolve issues and work together. So what I want to do is build consensus. I appreciate anybody who runs for any position, for any office, at any level. I appreciate the two individuals on the stage with me tonight. It takes a lot to do this. And so I look forward to working with them after August 9th. And should I be the successful nominee, I will go to them first and ask what they would like to do to perhaps help the situation so that we can get over the finish line on November 8th and take our government back and have our Republican control. So getting resolution requires multiple people. And the more you have, you get different ideas, and every good idea should be addressed. There is no bad questions. So consensus from the many gets you results that everybody's participating in and everybody owns. And that's a good way to continue it on. Thank you.
Mr. Michaels.
Thanks, Krista. That's a great question. Great choice, Kevin Nicholson. I had a lot of respect for him. I still have a lot of respect for him. He and I have a lot in common. Both veterans. He was in the Marine Corps. I was in the Army. You know, that matters on Army-Navy Day, right, when they played a football game. But he's also a businessman. I'm the only businessman on stage as well. But what's really important is the premise of your question, and that is, are we fighting too much or whatever? I'm telling you, I've never had a negative ad run from my campaign in this race, and the reason is, in my business, we've never won a single piece of business by talking bad about the competition. It's just bad policy. And if you get a reputation of doing that in my industry, probably in any industry, paralegals, whatever, people immediately disrespect you. So I'm hoping that we can all focus on what this is all about, what tonight is all about, what this campaign is all about, meaning this primary, and that is who is going to take on Tony Evers. And we all have to unify as conservatives to beat Tony Evers. So it's a very spirited primary, especially here in the last week or two. But a week from tomorrow, we will decide, and we need to unify, all of us, all as conservatives, all as Republicans in the state. Because Tony Evers, he's failing Wisconsin. He's been weak from COVID to Kenosha. We need to have new leadership in the governor's office, and that's why I'm running. I'm not running to win this primary. I'm running to replace Tony Evers. Thank you.
Will all of you vow to support the winner of the primary on August 9th?
Well, I think because all of us spoke at the Republican Party convention, and one of the conditions of speaking on that stage to the delegates was that you would have to support publicly the eventual nominee. I'm sure I can probably speak for my colleagues up here to say yes.
Mr. Ramthun, yes.
I didn't need to sign a form to do the right thing. To do the right thing is to stay together, unify, and win, and get unfinished business done starting on November 9th.
Mr. Michaels?
Absolutely. It's been about beating Tony Evers from the beginning, and it'll be about beating Tony Evers till the end of the election cycle in November 8th, I believe.
Gerron is with our next voter and our next question.
The next question comes from Serena Martin. Serena Martin is a graduate student from Milwaukee. She is also an advocate for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. She's concerned about access to firearms. Your question.
Good evening. I am concerned. Gun violence nationally is a major concern. Here in the state of Wisconsin, we are above average in the number of homicides. Specifically, domestic violence, we were at 68. We've had a 30 to 40% increase, and 52% of those homicides were due to acts of gun violence and firearms. What do you have in mind? What's your plan for reducing and or eliminating the repeat acts of gun violence from those who have minor convictions and are still able to possess and or purchase firearms in the state of Wisconsin?
Mr. Ramthun, you are first.
I am a Second Amendment supporter. I believe it's a right for us to keep and bear arms. That said, I think one of the many causes in our societal dysfunction is lack of respect. I think it starts at the early ages I mentioned earlier with education. I think we have to get information out to youth sooner and talk more about the respect for others. We're all God's children, but we don't treat each other that way. And so an element that I think has been lacking greatly with our youth is the exposure to that reality. With that, I would think additional efforts to help educate even adults and work on the understanding of what it means to carry if you have to carry, and it should be all done legally and not illegally. So there's the training element that we're lacking awareness and compassion element, I think, is a big part of the problem. Guns have been around for centuries, and yet we've seen in the last couple of decades an uptick in their abuse. So for me, it's more of the understanding and use than it is the actual weapon itself. And so I'm apprehensive about blaming weapons for the situation when we should focus on who's using the weapons. And that's where my answer would start with. Mr.
Michaels.
Yeah, Serena, I commend you. Great cause, domestic violence. There's way too much of it in society today. The problem is the guns are all over on the streets now, and recently it's just started to bleed into the household as well. The reason I believe that is that the bad guys, if you will, they have such disrespect for the law. And one of the first things we need to do is enforce all of the laws and allow law enforcement to crack down on these guys. I believe that law enforcement knows who the bad guys are in the neighborhoods and who has weapons and who doesn't. And especially when they start taking those weapons into the household and using it against their spouse or their girlfriend. There's nothing more awful than that. But I do agree with what Tim Ramtham said. Guns have been around a very long time. And guns haven't changed over the last 40 or 50 years, but society has changed. And we need to come down hard on the bad guys that have the guns and take those guns away. It just boggles my mind that when they arrest somebody who committed a crime with a gun, that one of the first things that the DAs want to do, or the prosecutors want to do, or the defender, they want to drop the gun charges right away. So you can't have it both ways. We need to be tough on crime. We need to make sure that only people that have guns are responsible gun users, like hunters, and then like those that want to defend their family and themselves and their property. But I am fully supportive of the Second Amendment. I started hunting as a young boy, and 12 years in the Army on active duty as an Army Ranger. I own a lot of guns, but I know how to use them properly and safely. And we need to make sure that more people are responsible gun owners as well. Thank you.
Ms. Clayfish.
You brought up the rash of domestic violence. And over the last couple of weeks, 6 women have died. And it was hard for me to miss in the paper today that the Sojourner Truth House was commenting on this. And I'm proud of the investments that we made in the Walker Clayfish administration in the Sojourner Truth Peace House, but it's clearly not enough right now because there are clearly still bad guys, and we have faced now 3.5 years of forced isolation, which has only exacerbated this. It's terrible. Now, I'm law enforcement's choice for governor, and I've been endorsed by the Wisconsin Fraternal Order of Police and the Milwaukee Police Association, the Kenosha Police Association Board, and more than half of Wisconsin's sheriffs. 2 days ago, I went on a ride-along with the Milwaukee Police Department, and there was another DV. There was another domestic violence, except this one actually followed a woman to her workplace. We were the first people on the scene. And I remember going in, and the main witness of the shooting was distraught. And she was describing a man that the victim knew, shooting her twice, once in the thigh, once in the groin, right there in the back of the AutoZone. I mean, the cops, when they responded, had to literally pull down cans of Pennzoil to mark all the bullet casings. It was horrific. He knew her. It was personal. That is domestic violence. It is always personal. But what is also personal is the fact that we today do not have leaders who are willing to stand up to these bad guys. And as your governor, I will assure that we take away discretion from the bad district attorneys and the bad judges who just let the bad guys back out on the streets, as you mentioned. So we're going to have to tie their hands by doing both bail and sentencing reform. And that way, you're going to have mandatory minimums for both bail and sentencing, so bad judges and bad district attorneys are not letting criminals with rap sheets a mile long right back out onto the streets. And the cops are arresting the same guys every 1 week. Imagine how the cops are feeling, doing all these investigations, referring these cases for charges, and then the district attorney just sets low bail or none at all, and the bad guy is back out in the street potentially harming one more victim. It's no wonder people are frustrated, throwing up their hands. That's why we will do bail and sentencing reform. I will sign them both. We will put 1,000 more cops on the streets, and I will fire the district attorney of Milwaukee County, something Tony Evers has the ability to do right now. And I will fire John Chisholm on day one. The woman who was that main witness came outside the AutoZone and was still visibly upset. I was talking to her, and she hugged me, and she literally said, I need you to take care of us. I need you to do this for my children. That's why I'm doing this. I live in Wisconsin. I want to protect Wisconsin families like I protect my own. And maybe that's the mama bear in me, or the sister in me, but these women must be protected, and I commit to doing exactly that.
But I wonder if gun reform may be part of that, and I'm going to start with you, Mr. Ramthun. Is there any gun reform legislation that you see yourself supporting?
Currently, none that I can name. From
red flag laws?
Red flag laws are red flags to me. It's the beginning of the confiscation element that would take away our Second Amendment right, and it would open up the door for additional tyranny. So I would have issues with that. But I would be interested to see whatever the legislative body would like to present, and we would have discussions. I'm open to that, flexible for that.
Mr. Michaels.
Yeah, so like I said, guns haven't changed, society has changed. And I want to make sure that law-abiding gun owners aren't having their guns confiscated because an angry ex-spouse makes a complaint. Oh, he made a threat to me, and then the police have to go confiscate his guns. The Second Amendment it's constitutional. It's a right given by the Constitution to bear arms. And I will support the Second Amendment. I believe what we have to do is enforce the gun laws that are on the books. And there are a lot of gun laws on the books right now. We just need to let law enforcement do the job that they want to do and take these guns away. And when these bad guys are arrested, not let them out on the street the next day. I also will fire these catch and release DAs as well. We will have rule of law in Wisconsin when I'm governor.
Ms. Clayfish.
Yeah, we've got to revoke probation for people who are caught with firearms when they shouldn't. That's part of our problem, is you have bad DAs and bad judges who are happy to just let the bad guys go back out on the streets. I'll additionally say that we need to put school resource officers in every K-12 school district in Wisconsin. Part of this starts in K-12, and when you have districts who are booting their school resource officers out of K-12, period, you're creating a culture that is not respectful of the law and builds no relationships. And community policing is gone in an environment like that.
Thank you.
Gerron is standing by with our next voter and our next question.
The next question comes from Dave Michaelsberger. He's a small businessman from Hartford, a Republican who's concerned about Donald Trump. Dave, what is your question?
Thanks, Jared. I would like to know if fortunate enough to be elected to the governorship for the great state of Wisconsin, if you will support Donald Trump in 2024 in his third attempt to be president of the United States, even after the events that took place on January 6th, 2021. And if yes, why?
Mr. Michaels.
Thanks, Dave. Great question. I understand the premise of your question. So I just want to clear the air for everybody. I have been endorsed by Donald Trump. All the candidates on stage went down to Mar-a-Lago, and we all, sought his endorsement. It hasn't changed a single thing that I've been doing since I've been in this race. President Trump told me, I'm going to endorse you, Tim, because you're an outsider, like he was. You're a businessman, like he was, and I'm a non-politician. He didn't have to go to Washington, D.C. He didn't have to run for president, and I don't have to run for governor. But I want to serve like President Trump did. He wanted to go drain the swamp, but we found out it's a very large swamp. Now, 2024, I'm focused on this election right now. I have made no commitments to any candidates in 2024. What I'm focusing on is beating Tony Evers. I believe that we need to have new executive leadership in the governor's office. So first things first, I do agree with what you said about the people that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. I believe that everybody that went into the Capitol knew what they were doing was wrong. I mean, how could you not think that that was wrong? So I don't support what happened on January 6th, nor the people that stormed the Capitol. Thanks, Dave.
Ms. Clayfish.
Sure. Hi, Dave. It's my understanding, actually, that that endorsement came after a photo of my underage daughter at a school dance was shown in that meeting. And as a mom, that is something that I have no words for. As far as 2024 goes, I can commit to you that I will support the Republican nominee. And it looks like we have an assortment to choose from of incredibly successful people across this country, and some of whom have already begun to campaign here in the state of Wisconsin and other swing states. Most important to me is that we retire Joe Biden, because Joe Biden has led our country into recession, exactly as we saw in 07 to 09 when the Walker Clayfish administration was very first elected. And I remember those days. And I was a Tea Party mom, you know, pushing a baby stroller from Tea Party to Tea Party, handing out my lid. And I was furious. And Jim Doyle at that time handed us a budget that was a pile of garbage with a $3.6 billion hole in it. But we were able to recover and turn Wisconsin around and make a huge difference. Act 10 saved $15 billion. We restored sanity in our state, and we were able to pass great conservative reforms like prevailing wage reform. We became a right-to-work state, but only after a very deep recession brought on by failed leadership. Joe Biden has failed this country, and it's time for Joe Biden to go. And I will pledge to you that in Wisconsin, we will deliver our 10 electoral votes for our Republican nominee.
Mr. Anthony.
I'd like to clear the air on this endorsement comment. On February 24th, I accepted an invitation to go to Mar-a-Lago on behalf of Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake. She had an event on April 7th. I went there for her. I gave her my word I would go. It wasn't cheap, but I went for her. While I was there, I did speak to the president for about, I don't know, maybe a minute. But I did not go down for him. I did not go down for an endorsement. He contacted me in November of 2021 and again on December 3rd of 2021 at my home, and we spoke. And he talked about endorsements, and I said, don't want to go there. I'm focused on a resolution to reclaim our electors because our elections processes are so broken. Even as recently as today, we've got issues with our My Vote, where you can get into the system and you could ask for my ballot to be delivered to your home, and you could fill it out and send it in, and you could be voting for me, and I wouldn't even know it. We've got issues with vans driving around in Racine County, collecting ballots right now from people. That's illegal, and there's no stoppage to this. My focus is the election-related matter because it's that critical to me. And so I told him I'm not interested in talking about endorsements at the time. I have his number. I never called it. It wasn't my place to ask for an endorsement. I think his policies were good, considered the condition of our nation back when he was president. Things were a little bit different then, but I don't like a lot of the tweet stuff and all that other things that went on. But then again, he had a media that was against him, and he couldn't get his message out. So I wasn't him, I wasn't there. But as far as I'm concerned right now, there's a process. Our republic has a process for elections. People can throw their hat into the ring like we did. And we are going to be vetted by the people, whether there's 3 or 13 or 33 people running for president in 2024. He's going to have to go through, if he throws his hat in the ring, he's going to have to go through that process again. And to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure where the nation is right now with regard to whether or not they would vote for him again. So I understand the speculation in your question, and in retrospect and in hindsight, I can see where it ties, but going forward, I think the dynamics have been so dramatic the past couple of years, not just in Wisconsin, but in our country, that it's going to be a whole new game for a whole new slew of considerations for our nation to pick from. So I'll wait till the day comes when we know who all the announced candidates are, and then we'll let the vetting process begin. We'll let the primary process occur, and whoever lands, just like it is for this one, that will be the person that we'll want to get behind so we can get our country back in order. Thank you.
Dave specifically asked about January 6th, so I'm just curious, in your opinion, did Donald Trump do anything wrong on that day?
Mr.
Michaels.
Donald Trump, he had a rally, and I think there were 60,000 people there. And in the end, I don't know how many, 3,000 or 5,000 stormed the Capitol. So I haven't seen any evidence that Donald Trump said, go to the Capitol now and storm it. I don't think he would have done that. Clearly, there's a lot of posturing that's going on TV right now, trying to make Donald Trump look bad with all these hearings that they're having. And it's a whole bunch of Democrats and two, if I may, liberal Republicans that are on that committee. So I don't think he did anything wrong.
To Joyce's question, Ms. Clayfish.
Well, I condemn the violence in January 6th right away, but I will tell you I believe that human beings are responsible for their own actions. And so ultimately, those people who did storm the Capitol are responsible for what they did.
Mr. Rampton.
I won't go into the weeds on what I've been hearing about January 6th. I'll simply say that there is a process of review going on right now. There is a judiciary type oversight that's looking into it, and if criminal charges come out of it for whomever and how many people, then that would be the byproduct of the actual act that would answer the question. I won't speculate anything more.
Very quickly, former President Trump has been pushing Republicans in Wisconsin to decertify the results of the 2020 election as recently as this past month. Quickly, would you sign legislation that would attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 election, Mr. Michaels?
Yeah, Matt, if I may, you said a quick response, but I get really, really fired up about this issue. When I took that oath of office, I swear to uphold and defend the Constitution. That wasn't a 12-year commitment. That was a lifelong commitment. I'm very upset that we're even having this discussion in the United States of America, here in Wisconsin. Was the election rigged? Was the election fixed? I've seen the movies, 2,000 Mules, rigged, all that stuff. Certainly there was voter fraud. Just the problem is nobody knows how many fraudulent votes that there were today. Justice Gableman doesn't know how many fraudulent votes there were. Nobody in Madison, nobody in the legislature knows. I get asked this question too. Justice Gableman spent $1 million trying to find out the answer. I could only hope that for $1 million we could have the answer to this. Everybody deserves to have the answer. Republicans, independents, Democrats. I'm really fired up about this. When I'm sworn in January, it's 8 months from now, I will look at all the evidence and everything will be on the table. I'll make the right decision.
Ms. Clayfish, would you sign legislation, yes or no?
No, it's not constitutionally possible. And you talk to any constitutional attorney and you consult our Constitution and statute, and you'll see that there is no path to decertifying an election that has already happened. But the deeper concern here is the fact that there are a lot of people who have deep concerns about whether they should even vote in the future. And if that is the concern, then we've got to address it. That's why I was the only candidate for governor on the stage to actually sue the Wisconsin Elections Commission. And that's important to note because I want to abolish the Wisconsin Elections Commission because they're a completely unlawful agency. They have been lawless from the beginning of the 2020 election process and beyond. And they blamed COVID every single time. So I'm going to abolish the WEC. We're going to ban ballot harvesting. We're going to ban ballot drop boxes and codify both in law. We're also going to ban central counts, which lead to those ballot dumps that people have deep concerns about. And I'm going to create an Office of Election Integrity underneath the umbrella of the Department of Justice with real law enforcement authority that can use our forensic auditors to audit elections moving both forward and backward to stop fraud before it starts, and finally purge our voter rolls. No more dead voters, no more people registered 300 to an empty lot. Let's make elections secure, free, and fair once again.
Thank you. Mr. Rampton, quickly on decertification legislation.
Quickly, not possible. My history is deep on this issue. I've researched this for over 22 months. I have a resolution. I had two, AGR 120. It got to the Rules Committee. All our legislative body needed to do was have a hearing. For an unprecedented historic event like we had in our nation in November of 2020, all we needed to do was have a hearing, and they didn't have one. We could have had closure on this thing, possibly, if we would have got it done, but we didn't. Now today, as recently as today, and I mentioned earlier, and I don't want to be too repetitive, but you've got a van driving around in Racine. I called Sheriff Schmalling and Lieutenant Llewell on the way here tonight and expressed concern about filing a complaint that that's happening. And I'll fill out forms tomorrow to formally complain that you have a rolling drop box. They've been deemed illegal by the Supreme Court on July 8th, and they're still doing it. You've got ballot curing going on from mail-in ballots coming in that have been ruled as not proper by the JCRER in our legislative body. You've got a body, the Wisconsin Election Commission continues to violate law because I think it's become a learned behavior for them, and what makes it worse is they don't ever get held accountable. So we need to hold people in the process accountable, or we're never going to fix this problem. We're going to have questions about our elections forever, and we're going to have selections, not elections.
Thank you.
I would sign legislation the nanosecond it hit my desk.
Thank you. Now, Gerron.
Our next question comes from Zeno Wilson, a first-time voter, a rising college freshman at UW-Madison. He is concerned about college and affordability. Your question.
Thank you so much, and good evening, candidates. As governor, what will you do to motivate college graduates to stay in Wisconsin and mitigate the effects of brain drain on our economy?
And I believe Ms. Clayfish should be in.
Oh, I'm glad. Are you going to UW?
I am, and I'm very excited.
Yay, congratulations. Go Badgers. I'm a Badger myself. I am glad that you are joining the ranks. I feel this question so hard because my daughter is 1 year older than you are, and there is a lot of parent guilt that comes with this burden. And I had hoped that we had saved enough money, but I have 2 girls, and even the valedictorian scholarship is not enough because after a year going in-state, she chose a different school, and now she's going to have to take out loans. And I get it. Average Wisconsin kid is seeing about $31,000 in student loan debt. And that's not okay. That's why I'm really proud of the fact that the Walker-Clayfish administration froze tuition for our UW system students. And I'm glad for that, but at the same time, we need to make UW affordable with your taxpayer dollars, because I'm sure you're working a job too right now. And so that's why I will take Tony Evers appointed regents who have not been approved by the state Senate and replace them with my own as governor, because it's important that we have a board of regents who actually understands what it is like to try and afford a college education these days. Listen, I'm a middle class mom and we have a budget, and so I get what it is like to worry. I get what it is like to have to go to your kid, both of them now, and say, you're going to have to take out a loan and just keep saving, and mom and dad are going to try as hard as we can. But we need to appoint good conservative regents so that we keep costs low and we keep our reputation high. These things are absolutely essential in order to maintain our rankings countrywide, because we want the University of Wisconsin system of schools to be a destination. You know, this is going to be your alma mater, it's my alma mater, and I want to remain proud, and I want to make sure that the Wisconsin idea still works. But you also asked about Gen Z retention here, and I want you to stay here.
Quickly, yes.
All right, I'm going to move your tax rate down to 3.54% on your income tax. That's going to beat all of our neighbors in the Midwest, all of our surrounding. Don't go to Iowa. Do not go to Chicago. Don't go to Minnesota. We're going to be better than all of them. And P.S., don't even bother going to Florida or Texas. And here is why. You know, we will not stop at 3.54%. We're going to gun toward a full elimination of the income tax.
Thank you.
We'll circle back if we have time.
Mr.
Thank you.
Rampton.
Mr. Rampton.
I would like the universities to participate in solving your question as well, and one of the things they need to do is lower their costs. We have to make it more affordable right out of the gate. In the private sector, as an individual who was in management positions with multiple organizations, one of the things I pushed real hard for was tuition reimbursement. Now, it's a very much smaller scale, but within an organization, a company, if you have individuals who work with you and they're going to school, we would give them their tuition and pay for that so they could do that without the burden of that and then the concern, and still work with us. And then when they got done and they graduated, they would come back and they would give us 3 to 5 years that they had to stay with the company to help repay that tuition without taking it away. So I think a way to incent people to stay in Wisconsin would be something along that line, where if you wanted to go to a certain type of university, that we would have some sort of tuition reimbursement program that would help mitigate the costs and minimize the overhead to you. But also, again, on the front end, the collection and creation of costs, we got to get that reduced so that it's more affordable for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Michaels.
Daniel, congratulations. I'm excited for you. Your life's about to change, probably for the better. Right? It's study hard, study hard. I get it. Tuition costs are way high. And how do you keep people here? I think you provide a more exciting and vibrant economy, a more exciting and vibrant community. We need to get crime down in Milwaukee, but Michaels Corporation has made a big investment in Milwaukee. You might see the shiny new building just a mile or so south of here. Young people love coming to work there. And I understand that we, the society, we need to cater more to young people so they do stay here. We can't compete on weather, that's for sure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about something else, though. I commend you for going to college. I don't know what you're going to study, but you might want to consider a VOTEC job. You know, you can make $100,000 as a welder. You can make $200,000 as a lineman. And as governor, I want to make sure that we do more vocational training in our high schools right after high school. You know, you don't want to go to a 4-year college and get a 4-year degree in Eastern European literature. I hope that's not what you're going to go after. And come out with hundreds of thousands of dollars of tuition debt and little prospect for job. Go get a great, I'm talking to others now out there, go get a great opportunity and learn how to be a welder or a lineman or a machinist, tool and die maker. We're so good at that in Wisconsin, building things with our hands. You can make great money that supports your family. But I'm wishing you good luck, and go Badgers. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. We'd like to continue with our next voter question, and for that we go back to Gerron.
Our next question comes from Anna Doty. She is a small business woman from Milwaukee. Her concern is on the next governor's stance on abortion rights. Your question.
With the decisive decisions that have been handed down, I'm just wondering, how do you look at the women in your life and tell them they're not capable and competent enough to make a personal, private, and often painful decision?
Mr. Ramthin.
Life begins at conception. Life is a gift from God. It's not the baby's fault on how they were conceived. We should do everything we can to save the baby's life and the mother's life if there's a crisis situation. If an individual created a baby that's unwanted, my strongest request would be that they would follow through with that decision, even if it wasn't the one they wanted to make, and at least offer that child's life to someone who would want it. Adoption should be the option. Not to terminate the baby because it's a decision that you didn't want from the outcome that you participated in. And so I stand real firm on that. I really believe that the Lord wants us to stop killing babies. Thank you.
Mr. Michaels.
Yeah, Anna, I'm pro-life as well. Make no apologies for that. It comes from my faith. And what I want to do is not just stop abortion. Being pro-life means public partnerships. So a young lady or a teenage girl that finds herself in an unexpected pregnancy, that she has all the options, that she knows what's going on out there as far as you can keep the baby and you can get adoption. And there's money there for infants and toddlers to help bridge this difficult time. Yeah, I understand it's a very difficult decision, but I believe that we need to stand up. I will stand up for the unborn babies as well. Thank you.
Ms. Clayfish.
Hi, Anna. It's a really hard question, and I know that there are a lot of people out there asking it who are scared and confused after the Dobbs decision came down, but I'm like Tim. I believe that life begins at conception, which means I believe that there's a baby, even if unborn, and that baby deserves the opportunity to live. That's why I would keep Wisconsin law as is, but I would also wrap resources around moms who are facing unexpected pregnancies to assure that they have the empathy and the compassion, but also the resources they need in order to feel comfortable making the decision that is best for them under the circumstances. But one thing that I don't think women should have to choose between is something that Democrats have been telling me and my daughters our entire lives, which is if there is an unexpected pregnancy, you must choose between the life of the baby and your own success. It is the most anti-feminist thing I have ever heard, and it is a myth. And we're the myth busters. This generation is going to prove something that I think women have been truly proving for generations in this country, that you can do both. You can have a baby and be successful. And as governor, I'm going to assure that that's exactly what happens in our state.
Ms. Clayfish, thank you.
Our next voter, we have several more important topics to cover as our next voter comes up, and already less than 20 minutes on the clock. Gerron, our next voter.
The next question comes from Kelly Bujak. She is from Pewaukee. She's concerned about inflation and Wisconsin's economy. Your question.
Good evening, candidates. Thank you for being here to share your platforms with us tonight. My question is, when you're elected governor, what will be your first action that you will enact or implement to support the Wisconsin economy to bounce back?
Mr. Anthem, you begin.
Petroleum drives our economy, and the price of petroleum has been allowed to go up. We need to start becoming more energy independent. We had a good roll going a couple, 3 years ago, and that all got changed. I think the pipeline should be restarted. I think as governor, I would want to bring a coalition of governors together to go to Washington and sit down with the president and say, you're hurting our states, you're killing our economies. We've got to get the pipeline back up and running again, and we've got to secure our borders as well. So I think to address the economy issue, one of the first things is petroleum, because it affects all of the others. The supply chain element, the trucking industry is hurt bad as well. So that would be the first thing I'd push for. Bring the governors together and head to D.C. and get something done so we can get the costs down, and then things will start rolling, and we'll have more to address after that. Thank you.
Mr. Michaels.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I know a lot about the pipeline and the inflation that it caused. We were building the Keystone Pipeline on Inauguration Day when Joe Biden shut it down. And what do we have to show for it today? You know, $4 or $5 gas, $6, $7 diesel, driving up the cost of everything. A lot of this inflation is caused at the federal level. It was bad energy policy and too many stimulus dollars out there coming into the economy. And it's hard for a governor, but I will be a big advocate for having solid, reliable, and cheap energy infrastructure throughout Wisconsin and throughout North America. That's good for our economy as well. I think the best thing we could do for the people of Wisconsin is, directly as governor, is to lower taxes. And I'm putting all the taxes on the table. We're going to look at everything from income tax to sales tax, personal property tax, all of these, and we're going to figure out how we can lower taxes in Wisconsin. It's a great way to stimulate an economy as well. History has proven that that's what works in macroeconomics, is to lower taxes. More money in your pocket, you're going to spend more, that's going to get this economy going. And then we can get guys like Zian here to stay in Wisconsin as well. Thank you.
Ms. Clayfish.
Sure. Because I was lieutenant governor and I led the governor's tax reform roundtables, I guess mine is a little bit more of a nerdy answer, and I get really specific. Because I'm a middle-class mom on a budget and I drive a 2002 minivan, which is not world's most fuel efficient, I can pledge to you that I will never raise the gas tax. But on top of that, we've got to get really specific on how we make Wisconsin more affordable again. The guys are right. It's true that the federal government is responsible for a lot of inflation. Joe Biden basically borrowed from our grandkids and then sent out a bunch of stimulus checks. But Tony Evers aided and abetted here. He was the one who kept the federal booster payment on top of unemployment insurance. So we're the last governors in America to literally pay people more money to sit on the sideline rather than jump back into the economy. So the first thing you've got to do is massive welfare reform to get more people into the economy, thereby addressing both the worker crisis, the shortage of workers that leads to unaffordability, and your supply chain crisis that also leads to unaffordability. So you have 123,000 people right now who are on the sidelines on welfare that we need to get back into the economy, but once we're there, we got to make work pay. And that's what I was talking to Zeno about earlier. You got to take your tax rate on the income tax, because a lot of these folks are not property owners, down to 3.54%. We hold the lowest paying folks absolutely harmless, and everybody else pays so much less. That way, you can fight inflation from within your own household budget because you keep more of your own money. Additionally, senior citizens can't afford things that are basics, gas, groceries, on limited budgets, and so we need to eliminate the taxation on retirement income, and I'll also eliminate the personal property tax.
Thank you. Gerron is joining us once again with our next voter.
The next question comes from Lee Schlinvote, the Ozaukee County Board Chair from Port Washington. He's concerned about property taxes. Your question.
The counties and municipalities' leadership struggle with their budgets in order to stay within the current tax levy limits. If you are elected governor, what will you do going forward to address the counties and municipality tax levy limits?
Mr. Michaels.
Yeah, Lee, thank you. And I understand, that all the municipalities are under great pressure to make make it add up. But I'm a businessman. I understand the top line, the middle line, and the bottom line. And in business, we just can't raise the top line if we don't have enough money in the middle line, which is our cost line, to have a balanced budget. So before we just allow counties to increase sales tax, I want to make sure we took a very hard look at the middle line, at the cost. Is everything done there as efficiently as it possibly can be? Because I'm sure you have constituents coming to you all the time. We need more of this, Lee. We need more of that, Lee. And it just, it keeps going up. But we have to be frugal. I'm a frugal conservative, and I will be very hesitant, and I probably will not allow any counties to raise their sales tax.
Ms. Clayfish.
Sure, Lee, I actually signed the Americans for Tax Reform tax pledge, and I said I'm not going to raise taxes because, quite honestly, the middle of a recession, and despite Joe Biden revising the definition of recession, we all know that that's exactly where this country is. That's not the time to raise taxes. But unfortunately, what you're facing in the county, what others are facing in municipalities, is inflationary wages, the same way every family is facing inflationary pressures. And so I get it. That's why one of the very first pledges I make to you is putting 1,000 more cops on the streets, but that comes from our state budget. I also know that we're going to have to do the maintenance of effort on that because we need to assure that our communities are safe. Now, I met a couple of weeks ago with 4 mayors, and all of them actually shared the exact same concern that you have. But we also need to make sure that when state aid goes out, that sometimes that state aid is isolated for a very specific purpose. And what we know is people need to be safe, our communities need to be reliable, and we need to have good fire and EMS service.
Thank you. Mr. Rantham.
Lee, can you tell me when your levy was last adjusted?
I don't even recall.
Been a long time, right?
Been a long time.
So your question begs the question. If we're continuing to try to operate in an environment that was created 20, 30 years ago, your cost of business is up, your product costs are up, supply chain costs are up, fuel and petroleum costs are up, you can't make ends meet, right? So to sit down with county leadership would be one of the first things I'd want to do, because I don't know what it's like to be you. I don't know what it's like to be in your seat and the responsibility you have to your constituents within your community. So I want to know. And in that discussion, we'll find out where you have your pain points on product price increases and the challenges you have to make your budgets meet without having to talk about initially raising taxes. You're just shuffling the deck, you're moving the problem. Let's try to solve the problem. As far as property taxes go, one of the things I'd like to see done is pull the levy for the public school taxes off the property tax bill, which will give us 60 to 70% savings for everybody who owns a home. Now that action shifts the tax to a different area, and let's leave that alone for a second. Let's go back to the school property tax. You're going to have a massive opportunity to save a bunch of money. Maybe somewhere in the discussion where you find the residual effect of that action, we can find a solution that helps address communities and county governments so they can make ends meet. So, but at the end of the day, for me, it's communication, discussion. Here's where we are today. Here's where we need to be tomorrow, and how do we get there? That's what's got to happen. And I don't know how much activity you have with state level support, but with this governor, you'll be seeing me quite frequently. I knew you were familiar when I walked in here, by the way. And you'll be seeing me quite frequently. We've got to get these things solved because we're kicking cans down the road. We're not getting stuff done. Thank you for your question.
Mr. Ramthun, thank you. We may tighten answers just as we near the end of this broadcast. Gerron has our next voter and our next question.
Our final question from a voter comes from Matt Neek, a lifelong educator from Wauwatosa. He's concerned about the exodus of teachers and principals. Your question.
Yeah, thanks, Gerron. So we've seen an unprecedented exodus at all levels, school board, administration, teachers. How are we going to secure education, one of the key roles of an administration? So what will your administration do to make sure K-12 education is set for the next generation?
Ms. Clayfish.
Sure, Matt, I'm a public school K-12 mom, and so I get it. Sadly, we saw the exodus of 1 million American moms at the advent of COVID-19. A lot of those moms, educators. And in some cases, because COVID put so many responsibilities on teachers, they're the first responders, they're the counselors, they're the teachers, they're the interveners. There are a lot of people who just got fed up and walked away from an industry that they felt was less rewarding. And that's on Tony Evers, the former Department of Public Instruction Superintendent of Schools. We're going to do universal school choice when I am governor, where your education dollars actually follow the child's education and not buildings and bureaucrats, creating rewarding environments for teachers where more schools that are better get more funding because parents are choosing to send their children there. The schools that are failing are the schools that eventually parents are going to shut down. Those are not going to be the schools that teachers want to pursue careers at. I think we also need to double down on substitute teachers. So my husband was a substitute teacher during COVID-19, and he said, I have never faced anything so ridiculous as trying to teach to one group of kids here and another group of kids here and try and manage class plans. It is incredibly difficult. I have a plan that I wrote out 2 years ago. You can still find it online to recruit more substitute teachers.
Ms. Clayfish, thank you. Mr. Ramthun.
Teachers are overworked, and many of them are underpaid. We've got to cut down on the bureaucracy of what they have to do behind the desk. I want to get them in front of kids and to educate them, get them the basics for their academic skills so they can become something in society. I'm a school board member. We deal with this quite frequently, and that's the thing we're focused on now. I want the teachers to have a better environment that's more conducive for them, too. They do a lot of overhead, a lot of demands, and to have all this paperwork and shuffling stuff around at the end of the day makes for a very long day, and it gets very tiring. So I want to reduce their workload, get back to the basics. Thank you.
Mr. Michaels.
Yeah, I went to public school, K through 12 in Lomira, about an hour north of here, and it worked for me. But that was over 40 years ago. I have so much respect for teachers. They shaped who I am today, from my second grade teacher to my 7th, 8th grade history teacher. It's so important. I believe the best thing we can do for teachers is unencumber them, get rid of the bureaucracy. We will not mandate that they have to teach these social things like CRT. We're going to get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's the best thing we can do for our children. That's the best thing we can do for the future of Wisconsin. That's the best thing we can do for the economy in Wisconsin. How do you do that? Universal school choice. It brings competition into the education marketplace. Competition is a great motivator. It works at my business. If we're not improving every day, we're losing. So I believe that'll also give teachers more freedom as well to do the job that they want to do, that they enjoy doing, and give them more options as to where they can teach. Thank you.
Thank you. And as the clock winds down, I'd like to ask you, but I'm also asking to please keep your answers concise. You've each said you're the best candidate to beat Tony Evers. I want you to tell me why you think your opponent cannot.
Mr. Ramthun, we start with you.
Well, that's an interesting question. I am the people's choice. Grassroots, patriot groups, freedom fighters, many of the county parties and many of their membership. I travel the state and they really like the message. I'm not beholden to any sort of special interest groups or Lobbying cores, I'm very independent. I'm of, by, and for the people, and that in and of itself makes me the strongest candidate by far. Thank you.
Mr. Michaels.
Yeah, I said earlier, I don't talk bad about people. Never got me a single piece of business. Here's what's important. Tony Evers has failed Wisconsin, and the people need to see somebody that is the stark opposite of Tony Evers. And that's what I am, a businessman, a veteran, an outsider. People are sick and tired of politics as usual. They are ready for a change. I scream change. This guy is different. This is something different. And everybody in the state is going to see that. Republicans are going to see that. Independents are going to see that. And a lot of blue-collar Democrats are going to see that as well. I have people coming up to me all the time. Tim, I've been voting Democrat my whole life. The union says I have to vote Democrat. But the Democratic Party has left me. I believe that you, Tim, that you understand what the working man does. You put on boots your whole life. Army boots for 12 years, steel-toe boots for so many years at Michaels Corporation. They know that I will support them. They want to go raise their family. They want to go to work. They want to go to their kids' ball game, maybe go to church on Sunday, and they want all this left garbage to get out of their lives. And that's why we're going to beat Tony Evers.
Why can't your opponents beat Tony Evers?
Well, because neither of my opponents actually decided to rail on me. I'm not going to do that. I want to make sure that everybody knows why I'm the best person to beat Tony Evers. I'm the best person to beat Tony Evers because I've actually been up against this liberal mob and this money before. I'm the only lieutenant governor in American history to have faced a recall election and beaten it. I faced off against 100,000 protesters in the middle of my own chemotherapy, and I was willing to lose my job on principle. It's that type of steel spine that we need to go up against Tony Evers. It's that type of leader that we need to lead us into the next era of prosperity, usher in the next conservative renaissance from right here in the state of Wisconsin. And so I'm asking for your vote on August 9th because I'm the only one, the middle-class mom from the country, who can beat Tony Evers.
This will need to be very brief. Will you accept the results of the primary election next week? Mr. Michaels, yes or no?
Absolutely.
Ms. Clayfish?
Yes.
Mr. Ramthan?
Yes.
All yes. All agreed. Thank you.
And thank you very much for being with us this evening. We want to thank the candidates for being with us tonight. I was just wondering, before we say goodnight, if there's anything you would like the audience to know about you in a very brief amount of time.
Mr. Ramthan.
I'm what you've been looking for decades. I am. I'm blue collar. I'm the people's choice.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels.
Yeah, this is an interesting election. People are really going to have to decide what the future of politics is, what the future of government is, what the future of Wisconsin is. It's time for a change. We need to stop politics as usual. Let's get an outsider. Let's get a businessman in there. I have the background, the proven executive experience to lead this state.
I'm ready to go on day one, and I need your vote on August 9th so we can turn Wisconsin right side up again.
Thanks very much for being with us tonight. We thank our audience. We also like to thank No Studios for hosting us tonight.
And the University of Wisconsin. Thank you to our audience. Thank you to our candidates. The primary is 8 days away. Good night.